This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Tonight we're going to begin a mini-series on discussing. Thank you. Everybody's welcome to join us at 1601 Quentin Road every Thursday. All women are welcome to join us every Thursday at BJX, 1601 Quentin Road. I probably said that 4 times in that one sentence. Okay. Tonight we are learning, tonight's food was sponsored for Leilu Nishmat Adara Bat Uniel and Efrat Bat Shammai. I hope I'm pronouncing those names right. It only came to me in English. We're also learning tonight Lofwa Shmati Yecheskel Ben Sila. Okay, so we're discussing tonight. Tonight really is going to be the beginning of a mini-series. Probably will take us 3 classes to discuss basically the depths of the story behind the destruction of the first temple. So we're not even very, very unlikely that we're going to get to the second temple. We're probably just going to focus on the first temple. And B'ezrat Hashem next year there's going to be Mashiach. B'ezrat Hashem this year is going to be a Mashiach, so we won't have to even deal with it. But I figured let's start from the beginning. We'll start from the destruction of the first temple. Now, the culmination of this, of really both the destruction, the day of both of this destruction is the 9th of Av, Tisha B'Av, which is the saddest day in the Jewish calendar. And not only is it's a day of mourning, it's not only a mourning for one of the temples, both temples were destroyed at that same day. Now, for whoever's not familiar, both temples were not standing at the same time. There was one temple, then the temple was destroyed, the Bet Hamikdash was destroyed, and then, 70 years later, the Bet Hamikdash was rebuilt, and then, about 400 years later, after that, the temple was destroyed again, the same exact day, Tisha B'Av, the same exact day. So, we know there's no such thing as coincidence. And if you don't know that, then you should realize that now that there's the Judaism believes, and the only correct belief is that there's nothing in life that is a coincidence. Everybody that you meet, everybody that you see, everything is orchestrated by God. Now, if the saddest day, the biggest, if you think about it, the Jewish world evolved around the Bet HaMikdash, the temple. And if both of them were destroyed on the same day, it should tell us something. There's something on that day. There's something going on that day. The fact that we mourn on that day is one aspect, but there's another aspect that we really need to learn from what's going on really on that day. You have, like when the Holocaust was over, and then the Jewish people rebuilt Israel. Like when the Jewish people came strong again, what was the saying that came up right after that? It was 2 words. Anybody know what it was? Nobody knows? Never again. Never again. As if, if we would have been stronger, then the Holocaust would have happened. What we're really attributing is all the problems and the suffering is in our hands. Never again, meaning that if we were stronger, we would be able to go, we'll build an army, we'll build a U.S.
What about like Shtapos?
I never heard a gadol, a big righteous person saying, never again. Why? Because we're all going to do tshuva, which is true. But they don't use that sentence in never again. Mashiach also, yeah. But we don't use the sentence never again is usually in reference to the more secular viewpoint where we'll have a strong army, we'll have the power, and we'll fight back, and we'll never again be humiliated, destroyed, and a bunch of other very, very bad things that would happen to the Jewish nation. So the one thing that we start learning from destruction of the first temple, destruction of the second temple. First of all, you'll see so many similarities to the Holocaust. Obviously, nothing can be compared to the burning of the temple, especially, even the loss of life. You can't compare. The amount of loss of life we had in the first 2 temples' destruction was also significant, most likely a lot more than what it was in the destruction of the Holocaust. Again, the numbers are, depending on how you calculate them. But there was a significant loss of life. Now, the entire concept, when we look at the destruction of the temples, it's not because the Jewish people weren't strong. In fact, the Jewish people, we'll soon see, were extremely strong. Everybody was afraid. The Jewish people were on a very, very high pedestal. Nobody messed with them. People were scared to go and fight with them. And that's not something that you say, when I was, like people say, when I used to walk on the street, the muggers would cross the other side, and then I would mug them, like some people say. It wasn't like that. In fact, my father fought in the Israeli army, and my father told me, after the 6-day war, that he would walk down the street. The Arabs were petrified of the Jewish people. They were petrified of them. They would cross the street. Now, you have one little Islamic kid, the entire army crosses the street. Right? What are we going to do? We can't shoot him, we can't handcuff him, we can't touch him, because the media is everywhere, and the Jews are always at fault. Everybody's always a problem. So we're looking at these these concepts of never again, because we're going to have the power, we're going to be able to fight, we're going to be able to win, we're going to be able to survive. We attribute it to ourselves. What we're going to see from the destruction of the temples that it has nothing to do with us. It's everything that has to do with God, and it depends. How is God going to go and either punish us or reward us? It all depends on our actions. If we will be good, we will follow the Torah, then we will get good. If we will not follow the Torah, then we don't get good, we get bad. Amen. Now, when we're coming, this is in the period of time where we're all mourning. This is why you have, the Jewish people, they don't listen to music during this time. The men, especially the Ashkenazim, they don't shave. You have a lot of different customs that is in the mourning period, because this is the period of time in the year where the destruction of the temple began and it ended by Tisha B'Av. Now, when you have to go and mourn, you have to grieve for something. If you don't know what you're grieving for, then how can you grieve? People don't know about the destruction. Yeah, one time we had a temple. And if you got into Israel, then you saw the Western Wall. And what is the Western Wall known for? You put little papers inside them. There's a little, bushes that come out, and people pray over there, and then you walk away. But then how do you mourn for the missing walls? What are you mourning for? If you don't know the story behind the story, if you don't know what really we lost, then you can't mourn for something. The concept of you don't know what you have until you lost it. Is that the right sentence? Am I saying it right? Okay, I'm botching it up. So even more so is that you can't mourn for something if you never even knew what you have. It works on the flip side also. Flip and parallel lateral, not 100% flip, but you get what I'm saying. So what we'll try to do is we'll try to uncover what really happened during those times. We're trying to look at the beauty. What was Jerusalem? What was the temple? What did it exist? And then go through, unfortunately, the horrific tragedies that happened during that time. And when the Bet HaMikdash was around, the gates of prayer were unlocked. Now we know the gates of prayer. Of course, you could pray at any point, any time to God. Obviously, not in the bathroom. Honestly, we're not putting all those things on the side. But every Jew is, non-Jew also, always able to pray to God. You don't need an intermediary. You go directly to God. There is a connection between you and God. However, the prayer doors are still locked per se. It was, and what that means that the gates of tears are not locked. It's for a class in a different time. But the prayers that it was before the temple was destroyed was significantly, let's just call them stronger, more powerful, maybe it would be a better word, than it is nowadays. And of course, it's still very powerful, and you need to pray, and you're required to pray, and that's the only thing that we could do. But can you imagine the power of prayer that you had, that you would say a small prayer and instantly you get answered? Can you imagine they had prophecies back then? You know what you had problems, you had questions, you went to a prophet. Right? Now you go to your therapist, your teacher, your rabbi, your social worker, your mortgage broker. You go to everybody, right? And you go and you say you have a problem. So everybody is giving you advice. None of the advice matches. You don't know what to do. You're banging your head against the wall. Meanwhile, you do nothing, like every lazy American, and nothing happens. But when you picture a time when there was prophet, that you would go to the prophet and be like, I have a question. Should I marry this guy or should I not marry this guy? And they'll tell you yes, no, maybe, whatever. I don't know what they'll say, but I'm saying they'll give you a straightforward answer. Should I move this? Should I do this? What should I learn next? What business should I get to? Everything you had right on the table. Can you imagine a life like that? No doubts, no sfekot. It's a different life. Just imagine how many mistakes and how many arguments could have been avoided. It's a bad example. I don't know why I'm going to say it. No, because at the same point in time, in those days, there was also black magic. There was everything, zelu mad zebar alokim. There was always something else parallel to it. So you would be able to attribute it to maybe something else. So there's always different angle. No matter where you are in your life, you always have free will. However, free will, and I don't want to get too much into this, but free will can be sometimes, leaning towards one side. Not manipulated, but more leaning towards one side. For example, let's say somebody tries drugs for the first time. And usually they don't like it, it's not so good, but then they try it a second time, third time. They have free will. Do I want to do it? Do I not want to do it? Fine, I have peer pressure, they end up doing it. After a few times, then they get hooked on it. Do they have the same free will that they had before? They don't. And you think about it the other way around. You have somebody that was religious, and then they decided they're not going to be religious. So the first time they break Shabbat, first of all, they're looking for lightning to hit. And they're looking for them, for God to, a big noise to come out and be like, you are now going to burn, whatever. So, very, very destructive things, but nothing happens. So they're nervous to do it. And then they do it again and again and again and again. All of a sudden they become what we call desensitized to it. So there is still the free will there, but it depends on your own actions on where the balance of that free will is. You can move your free will where it is. For example, somebody that keeps Shabbat very, very strongly, they don't have a temptation, but like, oh, no one's looking. Should I turn on the TV? Of course, they don't have a TV. But I'm saying whatever. They're in a hotel, right? So they're saying, should I do this? Should I? The free will can be moved. And in the time of prophecy, the free will was also, it might have been in a different place of where we can sense it now, but it was still in a very parallel place, because you had free will, you had prophecy, you had magic, you had the demons, whatever it is. Let's not get into it. But all we know is that there's always a balance of free will. Also, there was a sacrifice, a korbanot, that were given every single day, and this would atone for all the sins. Meaning that if someone made a sin, then you could go and atone and giving a sacrifice, and you're done. And the Chazal tell us, the sages tell us, that people would go to sleep in Jerusalem without any sin in their hands. Imagine that, completely cleansed. Right? Imagine what that does for self-esteem. I don't know, maybe it's just me why I speak to people of what, everyone always thinks that it's their fault. Like, imagine what that does just for the emotional and physiological, psychological for sure, well-being. And that, of course, goes into the physiological as well. But in any case, when you think about it, there were so many great things that were happening when the temple was. And maybe we'll go a little bit on a historical background of, let's go a little bit back in time. We're going to go very fast. And I'll tell you where I'm a little bit weary about going through fast through this topic. A lot of people have a very, very hard time. I shouldn't say hard time. They never learned it. No one really learned a lot about this stuff. Like who are the kings? Maybe girls did. You guys, girls did? Okay, fine. For some reason, girls learn more about this than boys in the yeshivot. But a lot of people are unfamiliar with this. So I might be throwing out some names, some dates, some stuff like that if it goes over your head, just bear with me. Just forget about the names. The names are not that important. But just keep your attention span and you'll be able to understand the majority of it. So, of course, everyone knows King Solomon. King Solomon was the one who actually built the first temple. In fact, King David, which was his father, King Solomon's father, wanted to build the temple, but God said, no, it's going to be built by your son, Shlomo HaMelech. And when Shlomo HaMelech became king in his fourth year, which was in the year 833 BCE, so you're talking about over 2,800 years ago, is when he started the construction of the first temple, the first Bet HaMikdash. And the reason why he decided then, this is when he had peace, everything was peace with the neighbors, he felt that this was an apropos time, and he began construction. Where did he, by the way, where was it? Based on the details of what his father, King David, told him, which was based off what God told King David and the prophet Nathan as well. So now, when you're building the temple, it wasn't just like, okay, you get a contractor, and you get a quote, and then you double it. Then it doesn't work that way when you're building the center of the universe, like what the world was created for. So there were tens of thousands of workers involved in the building of the Bet HaMikdash, of the temple. The building took a total of 7 years. It took 7 years to build the Bet HaMikdash. Has anybody here been to the Kotel? Did anybody here do a tour over there? Did they show you the size of the stones? Do you and that's, by the way, that's from the second. Obviously it goes from the first, but I'm saying that's already from the second temple where King Herod went and he fixed some things up. But you look at the architecture, just how could they go and lift the size of those stones to get to where it was? So we're talking about like a significant job. Forget about this is just plain stone. You didn't see the gold, the jewels, and the diamonds, and everything that went into the temple. So, after 7 years, by the year, it was the 12th year of Shlomo HaMelech's kingship. It was about 827 BCE is when the temple was completed. The temple stood, anybody know for how long? 410 years. It stood for 410 years. And there, the people would bring in daily sacrifices. There, 3 times a year, the entire Jewish nation would gather on the Yom Tovim, on the Ola Regel. They would go and they would gather up to to go to the temple. It was known that the divine presence was there. There was 10 daily miracles that happened in the temple, in the first Bet HaMikdash. And some of these are more, what you think is more impressive and miracle-wise than others. But when you think about it, there was so many miracles that were happening. These were daily. These were daily miracles. So for some example was that the sacrifice meat never spoiled. They didn't have refrigerators back then, right? You didn't put things in the deep freezer and be like, "Wow, we have a carbon pestle." There was, first of all, the halachic ramifications on that as well. But nothing ever spoiled over there. A fly was never seen in the slaughterhouse. Now, has anybody ever done a barbecue, a picnic, anything outside? You don't even have to open your stuff. You're already doing this, right? Well, some people are doing this just to shoo away their demons, but majority of the time you're going over there because their flies are there. Imagine that, where there's a sacrifice. You have dead animals. You have people slaughtering the Kohanim slaughtering the animals. Never a fly, not a single fly. And they didn't have one of those yellow things that they have in Mexico. What are the? I don't know. It's only what? Not the lanterns. Lanterns, that's America. What? The fly, yeah, those things. Right. So, or the zappers, right? That's what you're talking about. The electrocution chambers for the flies. So, they never saw a fly. The rain never extinguished the fire on the mizbeach, on the altar. The wind, there was a pillar of smoke. The wind never shook that pillar of smoke. There was a lot of people, and we'll soon see how many, probably next week, we'll see how many people came to Jerusalem. There were so many people that when they stood, they were very crowded, but when they had to bow down and prostrate themselves, all of a sudden everything, they had plenty of space. Now, if you could just picture this, just like for a second, just like picture what that means. Imagine you have over here in this, room, let's say you pack it up with like beyond, where's that? There's always a sign. It's probably here somewhere. Fire department, whoever's listening, it's here. I see it. Whatever. With the capacity, right? I'm talking about the capacity level. Imagine you triple that or quadruple that. You're literally, bumper to bumper next to somebody. And then everyone says, okay, everyone, you have to bow down now. And all of a sudden, everyone bows down, and they're like, all of a sudden, there's more room. Like, do you imagine? First of all, you'll be like, what just happened? Where's everybody else? Do you imagine that? And that happened every single time, without fail. This is what happened. There was never a snake or a scorpion that would harm somebody in Jerusalem. Now, nowadays, you don't see so much snakes or scorpions, at least if you live in Brooklyn. Well, at least if you live in certain parts in Brooklyn, I should probably say. And you don't have neighbors that have pets. We could go on. But anyways, you get what I'm saying. In the olden days, they didn't have, these insulated walls, the dirt floors. Snakes and scorpions were very common to the areas, especially if you were not in a very populated area. In Jerusalem, never. No harm would be done by a snake or a scorpion. A person never said to his friend, "It's too crowded for me to stay overnight in Yerushalayim." Now, I've had to travel sometimes, and let's say you have to go and find a hotel. And sometimes they have these get-togethers, I don't know what you call them, conventions or whatever it is, that everything is sold out. Have you ever had it? You could call Motel 8 through 6 to negative 12, all the, whatever, I don't know how many motels, from the motel to the 5-star, everything is sold out. Somebody was telling me, I was in Florida, a few months ago, and what do they do, those race, the people... No, with the cars, like NASCAR, but it's in Florida. It was a Daytona. It was something in Daytona. And they were mentioning when they have over there, when it's Daytona, there's everything is booked. You can't even find, a place to sleep over there. Imagine what it was with the entire, some people it's a religion to go and watch cars go around in circles. Or I don't know why they don't just buy train stations, and just watch it go around. Some people do. So, you go and the place is packed. You can't find a room nowhere, and there's no room to be found. Now in Jerusalem, where you have the entire nation need to go over there, there's always room. It's a miracle that when you think about it, sometimes it's more fascinating, more extravagant than what you would think that it would be of a lesser degree type of miracle. You think about it, it's really crazy. Where would all these people go? How is it possible everyone standing so close, and all of a sudden, everybody has so much room? So the temple was known. It was like a tourist attraction. Is the worst thing. I should never say that because it's really the worst thing I could say. But even for the non-Jews, people came around this was the temple. No one this was known. People went far and wide. That Israel was known for its power, for its wealth, for its wisdom. People came to study wisdom in there as well. For the foreign power, people came to give. Even non-Jews came to give korbanot, the sacrifices. So it was known to be a very, very high, like a world center type of call it a travel point. Lahavdil elef avdalot, not even a comparable. But if anybody ever travels to Europe. And there's certain cities in Europe, the main things, what is the main attractions? Anybody know? It's churches. The architectures of churches. You go over there, and that's what it is. And you have hundreds of thousands of people going, and the temple was not even on that. The temple was so much higher. You're talking about something that was a lot of these, even the churches, they're not in whatever you call it, services, whatever, use. Yeah, they're not in use anymore. They were never in use. It was always the time. But they're not in use, and you still have the temple while it was in use. It was people flocked from all around the world to go and visit it. Now, when the end of King Solomon's life came, he was guilty of certain indiscretions that only because of his level he was guilty of, and because of that he was punished. And after his death, his kingdom was turned into two. And this is where, slowly the downward path started happening. The northern tribes, it's split into the northern tribes and the southern tribe. The northern tribes refused to accept his son as the next king. And what?
Absalom, right?
No. So Rehoboam. So again, if I go into each, but what I'm telling you, by the way, each two sentences is a class in itself. We're going very briefly over the history because I want to get to the part of the destruction of the temple. So the kingdom was divided into there was the northern kingdom and there was the southern kingdom. So the northern kingdom was known as the kingdom of Israel, like of Israel, and the other one was known as the kingdom of Judah, or the kingdom of Yehuda. The part of Yehuda was the part where Jerusalem was. The other parts it was split. Was split in that I guess way. Now, the temple, the Bet HaMikdash was supposed to last forever. It was supposed to last forever. But it depended on how the Jews kept the Torah. If the Jews kept the Torah and they followed the path, then fine, it was going to last. But if they didn't, then obviously it was going to go on a different path. And after about 300 years, the Jews began to stray away from the Torah. And the prophets came and admonished them, gave them rebuke, gave them, told them you have to do tshuva, you have to return to the ways, you have to go to God. But they didn't listen. And slowly, the kingdoms started practicing idolatry. It started more in the kingdom of Israel, then it went to the kingdom of Judah, but one more than the other. But all in all, idolatry started becoming, shouldn't say rampant, but it was there during that time. Now, no matter how many times the prophets came, there was ups and downs, in everyone's life. And the prophets came and admonished them, but all in all, the Jewish people tend to not listen, especially closer to the destruction of the temple, did not listen to the prophets. And one of the examples was the prophet of Zechariah. The prophet Zechariah in the year 661 BCE, he went and he started prophesying and saying that you have to rebuke. He was rebuking them. You have to do tshuva. You have to go and you have to repent from your ways. You cannot do this anymore. And instead of listening to them, they stoned Zechariah. They stoned the prophet. They took stones and they actually pelted at him. And where did this happen? We'll speak about this more in depth in the next class or the following one. But they in the Bet HaMikdash, in the courtyard of the Bet HaMikdash, he was stoned to death, and his blood oozed on the floor of the Bet HaMikdash. And for over 200 years, the blood stayed over there. The ground didn't. You couldn't remove it, and it was also bubbling. And we'll soon see what this. We're going to speak more about this, a little bit later. Now, the prophets came, and when it came closer to the destruction of the temple, 90 years before the destruction of the temple, you had prophets come every day, every night, do tshuva, repent, fix your ways. But they didn't listen. And God slowly started showing the signs that He's removing Himself from there. And it started with the exile of the 10 tribes. I don't know if you guys are familiar with you guys are familiar with that. Okay, it started, the first stage was with the king of Assyria, king of Ashur. He went and he exiled. He came, he conquered the northern kingdom, and he started exiling. He exiled a few of the towns and the land of Naphtali, the tribe of Naphtali. He exiled them. Then the Jewish people, they still didn't repent. They still didn't do tshuva. So he came back, and it wasn't as if he was like, well, you're not repenting, I'm going to come back. It was actually God saying, okay, now they didn't repent. Now He's going to send them back to exile more. The second stage was that the king of Assyria came back, and because they didn't do tshuva, they went and they exiled the tribe of Reuven, Gad, and half the tribe of Menashe. That was stage number 2. After a period of time, they still didn't do tshuva. People still didn't get the hint, and then they went to the third stage and they exiled the rest of the 10 tribes. And this is known as the lost 10 tribes. If anybody's ever done any research of it, it's a fascinating topic. A while ago, I was actually considering doing a whole series on it, but then I stopped. And for reasons, I stopped and I didn't continue. But it's a fascinating topic to the extent that a lot of there are different places in the world that claim that they're from certain tribes. And I'm in fact in touch with some of them from, let's say, the tribe of Menashe. There's from different parts of the world in India. And there's even some that say in Japan. There's very, very interesting where they went to. Well, Ethiopians, you say also, depending on who you ask. But it's a very interesting that the tribes were exiled throughout the entire world. Now, only the tribe of Binyamin and Yehuda were left in the land, in the kingdom. This is the kingdom of Israel. I mentioned the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom. So this is the southern kingdom, and this was being ruled at that time with King Chizkiyahu. King Chizkiyahu was, Sancherib, which was the Syrian king. He wanted to try and capture Jerusalem, and in fact, he went and he put a siege around Jerusalem, and there was a crazy miracle that all his soldiers died in one day. He tried to go and take Jerusalem, but all the soldiers in a plague died in one day. And so needless to say, there was no siege happening, over there. And the kingdom of Judah survived for another about 150 years after this. So at this point in time, when you're dealing with the northern kingdoms, which is the 10 tribes, they were in exile already, but the kingdom of Judah, which was Benjamin and Yehuda, this was still in the power of the Jewish people for another 150 years. Now, the king Chizkiah was a very, very righteous king, to the point that he was almost Mashiach. It came that close. A different lecture of why and what happened over there, but he almost became Mashiach. Now, he had Ruach HaKodesh. He saw that if he would have a child, this child would be very wicked. And because he saw that this child is going to be very wicked and cause many people to stray, he decided that he's not going to get married. He's not going to get married, and this way he's not going to bring a wicked child to the world, and there's not going to be any problems coming from his descendants. Then the prophet Yeshayahu, the prophet Isaiah, came over to him and says, "What are you meddling in God's business? You have an obligation. You have to get married, then you get married. What's going to be over there? That's up to God. That's not about you." So he went and they convinced him for other reasons as well that he go and he should get married. He was married and he had a child by the name of Menashe, and we know, when Chizkiyahu passed away and Menashe went and became king, he was an extremely wicked king. And not only did he forget God, he brought idolatry into, not only he brought idolatry into land, he put an idol into the temple. And not only that, he had bloodshed on his hand. In fact, he killed his grandfather, the prophet Yeshayahu. So he had bloodshed. He put avodah zarah, he put idolatry in the actual temple. And this is where it went from a steep downhill. In about 110 years was till the destruction of the first Beit Hamikdash. Now, even though King Menashe actually did tshuva before he died, he ruled for 55 years, and the downward spiral was pretty steep. And when his son Amon came king, he followed in his father's, which is his wicked father's footsteps. In fact, the Gemara tells us that his wickedness exceeded that of his father. So one after another it became worse, to the point that his servants assassinated him. And then Yoshiyahu, which was his son, which was King Chizkiyahu's grandson, became king. And over here, King Yoshiyahu, he was a righteous king at this point. And he decided he's going to do a major project. He's going to repair the temple. He's going to bring everything. He's going to bring the Torah back to the way that it's supposed to be. And the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, opened up the Torah scroll in the temple, and he opened up to a certain section. And when he read it, the king Yoshiyahu realized that this is a sign from heaven. It wasn't the best part of the Torah. It wasn't the best part. It was a very, very difficult part, to read, and he took this as a sign that he needs to do tshuva, that the whole nation has to do tshuva, or they're going to be sorely punished. In fact, there was even prophecy that came and said that the temple is going to be destroyed. So what did King Yoshiyahu do? He went and he did a mass tshuva movement. He made a mass tshuva movement, and people, the commentators asked, why did he do a mass? If there was already prophecy that said that the temple is going to be destroyed, then why was he going and saying, oh, let's do tshuva? It was already a prophecy that there's going to be destroyed. And the answer is that even if there's a bad prophecy, even if you're in the worst position, you're literally in the worst place, it doesn't matter. You could still do tshuva and you could still change the decree. So he made this massive movement to do tshuva. And what he did was he instituted workers and officers to go into the houses and remove all the idols from the houses. And what happened was that the people were very devoted to their idolatry. which was very interesting because they served God and they served idolatry also. We see that at different points of time in Judaism, and we're always wondering, like, how is that possible? How can people do that? Can you imagine? You go pray mincha, and then afterwards you go and bow down to like a little Buddha. Like, how does that even work? How can you? What are you? Making sure you're covering all your bases. I was once. Who did I meet? I forgot who I met. It was a while ago. I think I said this story once. I came. It was in someone's house, and I see a mezuzah in the house. And then I go, so I see the mezuzah, I go inside, kiss the mezuzah, I go inside, and then I was shocked. Like, inside the house is crosses everywhere, and then you have the prophet Mary, whatever, it's not a prophet, she's no one, whatever. She had Mary, pictures of Mary with her halo in the back. You could have even had a Quran somewhere in the corner. So, being that I have a big mouth, I'm like, what's going on over here? It's like, what are you doing? So, and the truth is, you think it's funny, I've met more than one of these type of people. This is not. Yeah, what are their thoughts? Jewish? It depends on what you call Jewish. I don't know. It was questionable. Jewish, I know. I'm saying it's questionable. So he was. I remember one person telling me, he's like, listen, I got to cover all my bases. He's like, you never know. Like, either this. I'm like, it doesn't work that way. You can't be like, well, 1 for 3. I got. Did pray to you. So I'm like, it doesn't work that way because one negates the other. And the other negates all two, both of them. But in any case, you had over here that the Jewish people, they served God, but at the same point in time they had idolatry. What did they do? So they knew they had officers coming in to searching the houses. So they did is that when the officers came in, they put the idols like behind the doors. Anybody ever see like those accordion doors? So when let's say you put the picture of an idol on the accordion door, when you open it, there's no idol. You search the entire house, there's nothing there. Then you close the accordion door when the officer leaves, and all of a sudden the idol is back. So they would hide it behind these things. Let's hold on to the questions at the end. They would hide it behind these different places, and they always kept this idolatry over there. So the king at that point in time thought that the Jewish people were on a very high level. No idolatry. They're serving only God. They're on a very high level. So what happened was that there was going to be almost a war against the king of Egypt, Pharaoh of Egypt. And the prophet over there told him, that the king of Egypt wanted to pass through. King Yoshua said, no, we're on a high level. We don't need to let them pass through. And the prophet said, no, you do need to, because you're not on a high level as you think. And the king didn't listen to it. And because of that, the king of Egypt went in, and they ended up actually capturing the king Yoshua. And through this war, he died at the age of 39. King Yoshua died. His son, King Yoakim, he went and he was wicked. He went and he was a wicked king. They went back to the wicked ways. And at this point in time, you had Yirmiyahu, the prophet Jeremiah. He came and he started spreading the word of God. Now, this King Yoakim, he despised Jeremiah. He despised Yirmiyahu. And in fact, the sages tell us that the most likely the most unpopular prophet of all time was Jeremiah. It was the most unpopular one. Nobody liked him. For 40 years, fearlessly, he went and he started telling people publicly, you got to do tshuva, you got to repent, otherwise God is going to destroy the temple. He was getting people to repent again and again and again and again, and people would not listen. Not only they would not listen to him, they hated him, they threatened him, they even persecuted him. Since he went into, they was thrown into prison, he was hit, but he was never intimidated. Right. But they say that the prophet Yirmiyahu was more hated than even during the 4th year of the king's reign, it was 18 years. This is you're talking about. We're up to 18 years before the destruction of the temple. So God commanded Yirmiyahu to go and prepare a scroll, and he's going to record the predictions that God's going to give him. That this is the evil that's going to happen in the land, and this is where he started writing the book. He started writing the book of Echa, Lamentations, I think is the English translation. This is where he started writing the book of Lamentations, and he wrote over here chapters 1, 2, and 4, and the Gemara in Moed Katan tells us that the king who hated the prophet, he got a hold of some of the manuscript, and the officers read it to the king. And since what does it say over here? So it said, they start reading from the beginning of Echa. It says, the Jerusalem sits in solitude. So the king says, who cares? As long as I'm king, I don't care. Then it says that Judah has gone to exile because of the suffering. Again, the king replied, I don't care as long as I'm king. And then it went to the 5th verse, and it says that her adversaries had become her ruling monarch, meaning that that Jerusalem is no longer going to be ruled by the king. He says, oh, no, this I can't have it. And he became very angry, and what he did was that he took a razor, and he cut out from the scroll, he cut out God's names, and he took it and he threw it into the fire. And because of this, the king doomed himself to a very, very terrible death. And after this, God told Jeremiah the prophet to finish writing the book of Eicha, and this is where he wrote the third chapter, which is the longest and the most tragic of all the chapters. The prophet Jeremiah, he saw the destruction coming closer and closer and closer, and he's trying. You know how like when you see, have you ever been driving and you could you see the accident happening, and you're like, oh no, or you're like freeze, like sometimes there's like a glass falls, it's always in slow motion. You could totally get it, you could, but you're like, oh, no, and then it just cracks, and and then it just falls down. So, I can't compare this to what Jeremiah was going through, but he saw what was happening. He knew how to stop it. He knew just, put on the brakes, do tshuva. But no matter how many times he said, no one was listening to him. No one followed his words, and they continued on their destructive path. Now, he kept on saying, he says, all you need to do is just shed some tears. There's no other stronger power than when you pray to God and you shed your tears and you say, God, I'm sorry, I did wrong. I didn't follow your path. I did wrong. I know what I got to do. He says, there's nothing like that. That's all they needed to do. Just do something like that. But even that, he wasn't able to get them to do that. After that, the king died, and his son Yoachim, he came to king. He was only king actually for 3 months. Following after him was a king by the name of Tzidkiyahu. And he ruled, this was the final king until the destruction of the first temple. He ruled for 11 years. And he started ruling at the age of 21. Now, King Tzidkiyahu, he calls Jeremiah and he says, please pray. Pray for us that we should go and, pray to God on our behalf. And Jeremiah said, he knew it wouldn't work. He says, it's insincere. Because even the king, he was calling on, the king of Egypt to come and help them fight the war against Babylon. He didn't even, I don't know how to say it, that he didn't really rely on the power of prayer. He relied on his own power. He relied on the power that he had over that. So, Jeremiah, the prophet, says this is not going to work. It's just not going to help. So, during this time that Jeremiah was constantly trying to get people to do tshuva, and people were insulting him, they even whipped him, and they even imprisoned him, and they put him in a pit full with mud and like slimy water. This is the prophet of the time. And King Tzidkiyahu went and he rescued him, and he brought him to his palace, and he said, tell me what's going to be. Reveal to me God's plans. So Tzidkiyahu said, at this point, he says, you have to go and you have to surrender to the Babylonians. You have to go and you have to surrender, and if you do, you will live, and the city will not be consumed by fire. And he said, not only that, your dynasty will live on as well. But if you arrogantly refuse, then everything is going to be destroyed, and you won't make it either. So King Tzidkiyahu, which he ignored the prophet's word. He was a weak-hearted. We'll soon see he was actually righteous, but he was weak-hearted in the sense that he feared that the subjects, his people that he ruled over, would rebel against him, and they would imprison him and torture him. So what he told Jeremiah, even after this, he told Jeremiah, he says, you don't tell this to anybody, this prophecy. And in fact, not only that, he incarcerated, he put him in jail. He put Jeremiah in jail, he put the prophet in jail because he didn't want him to say anything. And he put guards in front so that no one should go close to Jeremiah. And during this time, the Sanhedrin goes and says that the king, even though that he was known as a righteous king, he was still severely punished. He was known, actually he had another name, Shalom, because he was perfect in his conduct. But the Gemara in Sanhedrin goes, it says that this was not enough to save him from what? From the bad influence of his peers, because he was around people that were bad and wicked, and they corrupted his ways, and he had the power, and this is the most important part, he had the power and the authority to prevent them from sinning. And because he didn't, so it went on his head as well. And this is something that we hear again and again, that if you have the power to prevent somebody from doing something bad, and you don't, then in some sort of sense you have a responsibility of that sin as well. And it's crazy the responsibility that we have. Every Jew is connected. We say Kol Yisrael Aravim Zeh Lazeh. We're all responsible for one another. So if one Jew is doing a sin, it's my responsibility. There's nothing like mind your own business. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work. Just like a Jew helps another Jew out when a Jew is in need, so too a Jew needs to help another Jew out when a Jew is in need spiritually. And sometimes they don't want the help. Sometimes they don't want the help. They're not interested in it. They're not interested. And you still have to go and you have to do whatever it is that you can. I remember to this day I had to. You have to pray for them, and you have to. Yeah. I remember it was like 3 years ago. I was involved with a situation where I had a student of mine. A very close friend of his was dating a non-Jew, and and he was like, no, I don't want to get involved. I'm like, what do you mean you don't want to get involved? This is a loss. This is terrible. Could be you know what? People don't understand the severity of it. People don't understand what assimilation means. And like, you have a responsibility for that. You have a responsibility to go these things. So it was fascinating. What ended up happening? We ended up arranging a class, and then it ended up it was a fascinating turn of events. Baruch Hashem, he got some sense into him and actually found somebody a lot better, for this person. It's very difficult, in the dating world when you're dating somebody, and you see blindly. I don't know if anybody has ever done this. I speak to so many people in the dating world, but you're dating somebody, you see so blindly, and sometimes you could see somebody it's really not for you. It's really going to be a very, very abusive relationship. It's very, and trust me, we don't need any more abusive relationships. The amount of stories that I myself hear of what, people are trying, and by the way, abuse goes from both sides, men and women, right? It's not only the man that abuses the woman. Sometimes the woman, nowadays, the women are stronger than the men. So, but you hear about the amount of abuse, but people are stuck in this relationship. They don't realize it. They're in this situation, and they fall in more and more. And sometimes they need help, guidance, better yet, just to show them the possibilities, show them the opportunities that exist. And it's very, very imperative. People really should utilize this more. That when you're in doubt in a certain situation, you speak to somebody. It's very important to speak to somebody when you're not sure, because you're emotionally invested. Then you're already not you're not thinking straight. If let's put it this way, if let's say somebody's a die-hard fan of some sort of famous person, doesn't matter, pick your choosing, and they're selling a used car, and you want to go and you're like, this is the car that, and whoever you worship, whoever it is that, this is the car that blah 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 drove and owned for like 20 years because it was very fruitful, whatever it is. This is the car, and you go and I'm like, can you imagine driving the same thing or holding the same purse as, I don't know what the most famous woman, what's the Queen of England's name? Queen of, people don't care about that, right? It's more movie stars now, right? Let's say you hold the most famous movie star. Who's the most famous woman movie star? There's no nothing?
There are all famous.
Well, yeah. So, whatever it is, imagine you take the most famous, something personal of hers, and you can buy it. And you're already emotionally, you want to buy that. So now when you're looking at something, it's damaged, it's not going to last, it's going to fall apart, it's going to cause you more headache than not, then you're always going to be worried about it. It's going to cause you more problems than actually will be a benefit for you, but you're not thinking about it because you're already emotionally invested. You're like, oh, no, I love this. I connect to this person all of a sudden. So the same thing is with relationships. Sometimes you're connected and you don't see things straight. Now, what is so important about relationships that has to do with what we're speaking about right now is that the king, when you're dealing with your close peers, it changes who you are. It changes who you are. I know somebody who he passed away not too long ago, married a non-Jew, the Christian, and the children were able to influence the father into Christianity away from Judaism. And to the extent, whatever, Baruch Hashem, he got out of it to a certain point, but we don't realize that we get influenced by our peers. Now, King Tzidkiyahu, he was influenced by his peers. So even though he was righteous, but he was influenced, and because he didn't go and he didn't prevent them from sinning, and he could have prevented it, then it caused that he's held responsible for the sin as well. Now, Nebuchadnezzar, when King Tzidkiyahu, was, they had their meeting, Nebuchadnezzar made King Tzidkiyahu swear that he would swear that he will be loyal to Nebuchadnezzar, and he swore in the Sefer Torah. And right after that, the arrogant princess, again his bad influences, convinced him to rebel against Nebuchadnezzar and caused a tremendous Chilul Hashem, and so on and so forth, and that led also to the destruction. A final point that I want to, two final points I want to speak about is why did Nebuchadnezzar, the sages tell us that Nebuchadnezzar, he merited ruling over Bavel. Bavel became huge, and the reason is that he was a scribe for the king, And one time he was not on duty, and the scribe had to write. The King Chizkiyahu was sick, and he wrote. The king asked the scribe to write a letter to the sick king of Jerusalem, and go and write how he's doing. So what did he do? He wrote, "Peace unto you, King Chizkiah, peace unto the city of Yerushalayim, and peace unto the great God." So when Nebuchadnezzar, another scribe, he's like, "Whoa, what did you write over there?" And he wrote over there, and he said the order. He says, "Wait, you're putting God all the way at the end? You have to put God all the way in the beginning. You can't put God all the way at the end." And he ran 4 steps, and he said, "No, you got to change it." Even though he wasn't on duty, he wanted to have the honor of God, place God in the first, and because of that, he merited greatness. Because of the honor that he showed to God. In any case, and he ended up, it was under his rule that the first temple was destroyed. The generation at this point in time, besides having the good prophets and the prophets that constantly prophesied and said, you have to do tshuva, you have to do repent, there were also false prophets. There are prophets that says, don't worry about it, it's okay, everything is going to be, God loves everybody, God will never destroy his home. And they prophesied in the name of God. The people, who are they going to listen to? You have someone that says, you don't have to change, you're perfect just the way you are. And then you have somebody else, you have to change your lifestyle. Your lifestyle is against God and you're going to be punished. Naturally, you're going to listen to the one that says, you don't have to change. So people started listening to these types of prophets, the false prophets, and people did not listen to the real prophets. Nowadays, we don't have prophecy. But you see different groups of people. In the rabbinic world, different groups of people in different sects of Judaism, and you have certain rabbis that are going and say, you guys have to do tshuva. You guys have to fix your ways. We don't, if you think about it, everything that happens to us is all based on our actions, our good or the bad. Meaning that if you want a good life, you want to lead a successful life, then you do good. What does it mean that you do good? Not that you're a good person in American society. That, of course, you need to. But what it ultimately is that you're good, to God. You follow the Torah. God created the world. God gave you instructions, and these are the instructions. And God said, you follow these instructions, I'll take care of you. You don't follow these instructions, you're on your own. And that's not a good thing to have. You want to be on God's side. At the end of the day, God's going to get his way. The question is, think of it, bad cop, good cop. You're going to either get it with a coffee and a cigarette, or you could get it with a boot to the face. All right? Or in other places as well. God is going to get his way. So the choice of your life, people sometimes have difficult lives. And again, it's not because they're bad people. It could be from previous reincarnations. We're not going to get into that. But one thing that you could change is it all depends on your actions. And we see time and time again, the first destruction of Beit HaMikdash, second, the Holocaust. People didn't listen to God. And when you don't listen to God, there is repercussions that have to come. There's a time and a day that we have to pay. Now, for some people, it's very difficult. How could somebody go from 0 to 100? And you're right, not everybody is able to get there. But you have to go in the right direction. If you're going on the right direction, then you know that you're good. Or you're on the path to goodness, depending on your baby steps, big steps, or mediocre steps. Then you know that you're okay. But if you stay just the way that you are, then know one thing, that you are not okay. And as difficult it is, it's not so difficult for me to say it. I don't know. I'm pretty easy with it. It's not. We have to go and we have to fix ourselves. Now, people usually think, okay, fix ourselves. That's a life draft. It's very difficult. It's not so difficult. You do small changes at a time. It's not that difficult. If you think about it, let's say somebody who's never kept Shabbat to keep Shabbat. It's difficult in the beginning. In the beginning, it's a little bit difficult, but over time, you get to enjoy it. You get to, and you imagine the benefits, the physical and the spiritual benefits that you're getting in this world. And forget about the next world. In this world, you're going to be paid back. Like, if you think about it, like if you realize that God controls the world, if you realize that God has the power to do everything and anything to you, and you know that you want to get something, then you have to follow God. And you don't do it, so you're the one who's putting yourself in a bad situation. You're the one who's going to put yourself in a situation that's going to cause you, tragedies, unfortunately. And I don't wish tragedies on anybody. And the entire Jewish nation should only have good. And everybody should only do tshuva. But we have to wake up and realize there is a reason why we mourn for the destruction of the temple. The sages tell us if we didn't build a temple in every generation, that means that generation was as if they destroyed the temple. So what are we doing over here? Like, why are we not able to rebuild it? Like, why can't we go and just fix ourselves? Now, granted, it's difficult to go from 0 to 100, but take upon yourself something. It's during these times, the times before the destruction of the temple, the time that we're mourning the destruction of the temple, we have to think about ourselves as a time of mourning, not a time that's just like any other day. And as depressing and sad that these types of days are, and especially the classes are, and it brings your mood down, you have to always gain something, from everything. Everything in life, you could learn something. Everything in life, you could learn something. You could learn something from a cat. You could learn something from from an ant. Anything that you walk, you could learn from it. Those are the smart people, the people that are walking able to learn from other people. The lesser degree are the people that are smart enough to learn from other people's mistake. And the degree above that are the people that learn from their own mistakes. And then you have the people on the lowest level that they don't even learn from their own mistakes. They're people that go through suffering and tremendous amount of problems in their life. And they're like, well, I wonder what's going on over here. Maybe I have to change my mezuzah. Like, maybe you got to keep Shabbat. Like, maybe dress modestly. Like, maybe start learning Torah. Like, maybe keep kosher. But it's much easier to wear a red string. It's like, bing, like deflect the evil eye and I'll be good. Like it'll be all okay. I'll pay some Kabbalists to sprinkle some holy water on me and I'll be good. I'll be okay. It's not going to be a problem. However, but what do you have? You have nowadays, let's call them reform or conservative, modern, open-minded, what is it called? Open orthodoxy.
That.
Open orthodoxy. Says, nah, it's okay. Don't worry about it.
They're not
You have even people that go and they call themselves rabbis, and they say, homosexuality, not that bad. It's not really this. It's not such a bad thing over here. It's really meant in something else. Like, why are you changing the Torah? Like, why? And people are listening. They'll be like, yeah, look, it's my rabbi. It's my rabbi. I'm like, yeah, this is your rabbi, but you're going to be hanging around with him in the same place that he is in the next world. And, depending where that's going to be, I don't know if you're going to be, you don't want somebody, when you're going, think about it this way. When you're going and you want to get into shape and you hire a personal trainer, you don't want a personal trainer that she's, or she's whatever, she's eating cupcakes while she's like, all right, what do you want to do today? I'm like, I'll have what you're having. But all right, let's go, fine. But like, no, but I really want to get in shape. You're good, come on. We'll go on the treadmill for 2 paces and then, we'll do some stretches. You see, you have people that go into exercise, they want to go run. For 25 minutes, they're doing the same stretch. 25 minutes, they're doing this. And they're going over here. Then they run around the block and they go home. Right? They run around the block to get the cigarettes and the bag of chips, and then they walk home. Be like, yeah, I'm so healthy. But you want a personal trainer that's going to be military style for you. It's going to make you cry about your childhood. Like that type of personal trainer. That by the time you're emotionally, healed, physically healed, intellectually healed, you want, somebody in that level. And in fact, I remember when I was in Israel, there was it was like the kosher gym in Israel, and we had over there the person that was actually one of the personal trainers there he was Mr. Israel, meaning that he won the Mr. Israel, whatever, the flex competition, I don't know, whatever it is, he looked the best in underwear, I don't know, whatever it is, right? So he happens to be a very nice guy. I was very friendly with him. He's my height, but you can fit 4 of him. 4 of me and him. I don't know if you ever see that. Yeah, it's you walk around, around his body. It's like that thing. So, but you see how he goes and he would work people out. I had a friend of mine that went and I got him as a personal trainer. My friend threw up, physically threw up from the amount of work that he had. I'm like, look, you're losing weight from all angles. This is great, But he went because what do you want? You want somebody that's going to tell you, I want to see results. So, okay, what type of classes you're going to go to? What type of rabbis you're going to listen to? What type of books are you going to read? You're going to read everything's okay. Let's all hold hands and just saying, everything is great. No worry about everything. You're perfect just the way that you are. And then you're going to stay just the way you are. But you want results. You want to change your life. You want to become better. You want to succeed. Then you need to have somebody there that's willing to scream at you. And you have to be willing to be able to accept it. Not everybody's able to accept it. Some people hear rabbis that scream. I'll be like, not for me. Where's the joking guy? Hey, let me go to that guy. Where's the guy that, just says stories all the time, which is not bad. Jokes and whatever, those are all not bad. But ultimately, what comes out, you have to go and you have to change your life. You want to succeed? It all depends. It all depends on what you do. You have people that go to college, they go to university. They get the same degree, but they go to different colleges. One of them could be Harvard, another one could be, Bed-Stuy local college, whatever it is, right? Run in someone's basement. And they use the same books. And they have all the same curriculum. But yet, the guy who comes out from Harvard is going to be very, very different than the guy that comes out from the basement in Bed-Stuy College, right? He's going to, what's the difference? They have the same curriculum, depending on the teachers, depending on what they instill upon the students, and depending on how they say, no, you got to go and study, you got to memorize this, you got to do this. Not like you got to pay your degree. What would that happen in what was it, Hollywood somewhere, whatever it was, right? You got to go and you got to work. That's what you want. And that's what the prophets were giving the Jewish people in the time of the destruction. They were telling them again and again, you got to change, you got to work, but yet they didn't listen. They didn't listen, and look what happened, unfortunately. So it is incumbent upon ourselves that we have to look at ourselves in our day and age to see why the temple is not being rebuilt now. Why isn't Mashiach over here? And it depends on us. We have to do what we need to do. We got to help ourselves, change ourselves, and we got to also help our neighbors, help our friends, guide them. I'm not saying you call them up and be like, hey, you're going to burn if you don't blah, 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 blah. You have to do it right and smart. You have to know what you're talking about. And again, if you don't know, send them a link for a class. Give them a book to read, bring them to a class. Whatever it is, there's so many things that you could do. And when you're doing that, when we start helping one another, all of a sudden you see a tremendous amount of change. Thank you. You see a tremendous amount of improvement. You look at the tshuva movement. Now we have a tshuva movement. You have so many people coming back to the path. It starts as a, first as one person. And then, what it is, the first person of that group, there's always like a group of friends. I've seen this so many times. May God bless all of them, but the person who started it gets a blessing times 1,000. The person who starts that movement. So there's a group of friends, and the one person decides, you know what, I'm going to start keeping Shabbat. And he convinces or she convinces all the group of friends. I've seen it so many times. They don't realize the reward and the power that person has. That person is huge. All that is on that person. That we have so much power, and we have power only until 120. After 120, the book's closed. That's it. There's nothing that we could do. So we have to utilize our time on this earth. We have to realize what we're here for. And during these days especially, we have to focus on what we need to do. So I'll end off with the following point. Think about what you will do, and then we'll open up for questions. Think about what you'll do, what you'll change to make yourself a better person. If something is harder, even calling your mother and say, I love you is also something. Calling, somebody else and being just nicer is also something. Saying a prayer to God. You want to know what? I'll tell you what, you should, each and every single one of you, if you take my advice, will be one of the greatest things that you do when you get out of here. When you walk home tonight, or you drive home tonight, or you cry home tonight, whatever it is that's on your, right? Speak to God for 2 minutes. In your own language, Russian, Portuguese, Arabic, whatever it is that you want to do, English, God understands all languages. Just speak to God for two minutes. Just speak to God. You'll be surprised about what you'll say. Like, let yourself, you don't have to walk in the streets and be like, I'm say God, and they'll say, speak. It's not a problem. It's not, it's not a bad thing. Nowadays, it's not a problem. Just put some sort of Bluetooth in your ear, and you'll be okay. Direct call to God. Yeah, don't worry about it. But speak to God. Speak to God. The more that you speak to God in your own words, forget about saying Tehillim right now.
Change your life, I promise.
You will not. You'll learn things about yourself that you never learned. What you start doing is you say, this is what you're going to start doing. You start thanking God for some things. Whatever it is that you want. Thank God for the ability that you came to such an awesome class. Whatever, whatever. I don't want to give you things, but thank God that you had the ability to come and eat delicious food. Whatever, in a nice air conditioning room, on a beautiful Thursday night, in BJX, whatever. There's plenty of things to thank God for. But thank God for things in your own life. That your ability to walk, talk, and smell, and breathe. And there's so many things that you can thank God. After you do that, ask God to help you with one thing that you want to change about yourself. One thing. Spiritual, good, even if it's physical. Help me lose weight, help me gain weight, help me be healthier, physically, intellectually, psychologically. Whatever it is that you need in your life, ask God. Try that. Take one step forward. With that, B'ezrat Hashem, hopefully with one step after another, we have to hopefully get closer to building the Bet Hamikdash. Before I know I said one more thing, but really the one thing that we have to really say is we don't have the Bet Hamikdash because of sinat chinam, baseless hatred. So while you speak to God, instead of only asking about yourself, ask also about your friend. Ask something for your friend. Let's open up for some questions. Any questions? You had a question.
Doesn't this time also I always learn we have to start working on ourselves in Elul, whatever. So really doesn't that time start now why don't people reference that? Because really we should start forgiving people and just being nicer. I'm saying the whole year, but this is also more of that time.
So you know what? Rosh Chodesh Av is coming up. You know what Av is Aleph Bet. You know what Aleph Bet stands for?
Father.
Elul Ba. Elul is coming. So like we do. The truth is that people think like, oh, Rosh Hashanah is coming, I better shape up if I want to have a good year. Which is true, you should. But you should also realize that a person should shape up throughout the entire year. It's not, but it happens to be there are certain times that are more stronger powers.
Isn't like that like now like also because
yes.
We're like mourning the
Yes. We have a very, very, and by the way, just like a side thing, this is a side note, because I had this question come to me like more than once. People that go on trips, it's better not, this is a time that we mourn. This is it's not safe for the Jewish people. There is, we'll see if we'll speak about it. We'll see depending how Kabbalistic we'll go to in the coming classes. There is certain, let's call it an demon, angel, whatever. There's certain power that can cause greater harm during this time than during other times. And we always see throughout every single year, during this time, tragedies happens. So we have to make upon ourselves to be extra careful. You drive, be extra careful. You're going swimming, be extra careful. Whatever it is you do, you're shopping, obviously be extra careful. That's another thing in itself. Right? Yeah.
What if like someone's going to learn in Israel during 3 weeks?
You mean flying to Israel during 3 weeks?
To learn.
Then it's not when are they flying? During the 9 days or during the 3 weeks? Then if you're going there to learn, then you should have a safe trip. And but that's right. Oh, for somebody else, right? They should have a safe trip. But right. So it depends on the day. Depends on the circumstance. Obviously, go ask your local Orthodox rabbi on the situation. But there's always, yes.
I don't know if this is like a dark question. So you said something about like if you're trying to work on yourself. Let's say I have this whole plan in my head, and let's say I'm like, okay, from now on, like I'm gonna try, I'm gonna work on myself even more. And you said we have up to 120. So, and after that, the book is closed, and whatever we got, like that's what we're presenting to Hashem. Let's say I have this whole plan, and right now I'm on this level, and I want to get up to here, and I'm thinking like, okay, like I have to 120, because I'm not thinking I'm gonna die tomorrow, but we're not in control. So would you say like it's kind of not fair if Hashem kills somebody that's working on themselves? It's like it's closing the book on somebody who is thinking they'll get to such higher level.
Right. So that's actually a question, not dark at all. I think it's an excellent question. So the question is to just summarize, and especially for the camera people. So the question is, let's say somebody is on a plan of working in it, but yet God takes them early. Well, God never makes mistakes. So God takes somebody what appears to be at a young age. So be like, that's not fair. The person was on a path to go and to succeed. And what does that mean for that person? What does that mean for the growth? What does that mean for the plans that person had? So it happens to be that this topic is a very deep topic. I could speak about it for a very long time because we could go on different angles. We could go on what this person's plan was. And was it really a hard-focused plan? And were they working towards it? And if so, then God would see where they were going to. Or we could say that maybe, on the flip side, be like, yeah, the person had a plan, but he wasn't really focusing so much on it.
Like somebody was proactive about it, that they really had a plan, and they were already working on, let's say like they had 5 things to work on, they were already working on the first thing, and they're like, because for me, if I work on 5 things at the same time,
100%.
most people, you're
You
never
can't.
going to actually do everything right. So
Right.
you work on one thing, then you work on the next. So let's say they worked on the first thing, and they were coming up to the next, and then boom.
Right.
that goes with the
So what we're at, right. So I understand the question. My point where I'm trying to go at is there's a lot of factors that we have to come into it, because you're asking a great question, but it's like, think of it as a flat, but it's really, really deep, because it depends. Things that only God can know, like would this person really have succeeded? Would this person will have continued? Would the person, things that only are into God. But as a blatant, thing, I'll be able to answer your question from a little bit of a different understanding that I get very often regarding non-Jews that are on the way to convert. Now, when Mashiach comes, they can't convert anymore. Gates closed. So the question is, what happens if they're starting the converting process? But it takes time. But they didn't get there yet. So what happens? Is it also closed? And the answer is no, it depends. If there are some people that have been wanting to convert for 20 years. So those people, they wanted to convert, and they're not going to be included in the conversion. But there's some people that were actively working on converting, but it takes time. You have to learn, you have to practice, you have to show that you're there, and they're in the process. Sometimes it takes a year, 2 years, sometimes it could take even more. So if they're actively working and they're actively in the conversion process and they're there already, but so they still get in. But if they're not, if they're like, yeah, I'm going to convert, but that's been saying that for 20 years and they really know, so then also that's not really going to count. We could plug in that equation very vaguely into your question. At the end of the day, it's a question that only God can answer. Only God knows. However, we also have to be true to ourselves. That there are some people, and everybody, and you're 100% right, you can't take off too much at the same time because you're going to crash and burn. You have to take things slowly, but there are certain, but you know yourself if you're like, you're taking things slowly or you're saying you're taking things, you know what I'm talking about, right? Like there's some people that they start a diet every Wednesday and they break it by Friday. So
say God would like credit them if they were taking, like if let's say, like I'm God, let's say, and yes, this person was doing the right things and he potentially could have been a rabbi, like by 120 he would have been a rabbi. Would God like credit him for
as if being a rabbi? So no, it doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that you could get, which you get credit for your potential of what you could have been.
Yeah.
The greatest punishment of when we get up to 120 is why didn't you become you? Because you could have been this. Right. They're not going to ask you how come you didn't be, how come you didn't change your world? How come you weren't, Rebbe Kamievsky? How come you aren't, Sarah Schneider? They're not going to ask you the questions that like, how come you weren't the biggest writer? They're going to say, how come you didn't reach your potential? Because you could have done that. So you get judged against yourself. That's the scariest part. So you get judged against yourself. So, be like, well, I could have done it. Be like, God knows, yeah, I know you could have done it. I put you in this world. I know what you could have done, but you didn't. So ultimately speaking, yes, you do have the ability to, and that's all in God's hand of what God is. God's not going to credit you for something that you never did, only for something that you did do previously. But this should also be as a sort of a wake-up call that, ultimately speaking, whether we're going on the path, bless you, in fact, any other language? How do you say it in Russian? Okay. If you would go and you would say, okay, listen, I want to do good. Those people, I know I want to change. I know I want to change. I'm never going to change. It's like those people that I want to diet. They're like, I'm not there yet. I want to be religious. I'm like, where's the square root? And like, where we're going, I carry the one. What do you mean want to? The double negative. So like, a person has to be honest with himself. And ultimately speaking, I'll tell you the basic bottom line answer, which is not going to be a fun answer, is you get reward for what you did, not for what you could have done and you should have done. You get reward for what you did. So it's a scary thing, because that's why the sages tell us that you should live as if every day, it's a little bit of a morbid statement, as if every day is your last. Why? Because you never know, it might be your last. And the big rabbis live that way. And what it's difficult for some people, I agree with you that people should take it slowly. I've seen people go from 0 to 100 in 6 months. Yeah. Never in one step, but in 6 months. This is of some of my students.
Friends, like guys who like were like that, in like 2 weeks, and they're like legit and like. Right.
So you have to be careful with that, because sometimes exactly. You have to be careful that they did. You have to be careful. You always have to do it under the guidance of a rabbi or somebody who could go and guide you on it. But if you're going on the right path and you're continuously growing, meaning that within a few years max, you should be to get to the where we don't need so much a change. Somebody could become a doctor within a few years. You don't have to become religious within so many years. Like the religious is easier than being a doctor. And the doctor, you have to work so hard, and you can't sleep, you can't eat, you can't do anything. So you have the ability to do it. So you have even though that you should take your time, but do not say, okay, listen, 10 years down the line and 15 years down the line, you want to be who you want to be now, and if not now, within 6 months, you want to do that. So I know it's a very vague answer, but I hope it gets. Yeah, okay, good. You'll take it. Sold. All right. Any other questions? No other questions? Oh, awesome. Okay. Hazak Baruch. So Mashiach will be here next week, so we won't be here. That's it. Potentially won't. Then we'll be here. Yes.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.